just made me appreciate where I'm at. It's not even about just appreciating England and just appreciating your home turf. It's just appreciating where you are at, appreciating life as it is. Hello, it's Janine, founder of Janine'sJourneys.com. Today I just want to talk a little bit about one of the most powerful lessons I learned while traveling overseas. Now, there are many things that I love about traveling. Meeting people from different cultures all over the world, the scenery, I mean look, the scenery is out of this world. You know, when I was on Mount Everest base camp, looking at Mount Everest on a clear day, I mean, look, that's just something you can't do in England, right? Palm trees, don't get a lot of those in England, to be perfectly honest. And, I mean, beaches, we have beaches in England, but if you want to see the really nice ones, if you want to see the world's best beaches, then definitely head over to a tropical country like Thailand, where even the smallest of beaches is just, it's like a little gem, you know, the different colours of the ocean, and then you've got the sand, you've got the palm trees. Oh, it's just amazing. I could go on about the different reasons I love to travel, but that's not what I took away from traveling, because yeah, I saw so many great sights. There were so many things that I got to do which I never thought that I would be doing. But that's still not the most powerful lesson. The most powerful lesson was getting a better sense of who I am and being grateful for it. So to understand this and to explain this a little bit better, let me give you a little bit of a background about, well, a bit about where I'm from and the kind of background that I grew up in. So I grew up on a council estate in Dagenham, which is not the nicest part of London. It's a little town within London, and quite frankly, it's a dive. No offence to anybody else from Dagenham, that's where I grew up, that's where I spent my childhood. I won't be going back anytime soon, for various reasons. And I grew up in a tower block on a council estate, and even compared to some of the other kids in the council estate, I wasn't that well off. For example, I never went on any holidays, not even domestic ones. I didn't have some of the things that my friends had. And I felt relatively underprivileged, and even sort of being ready, like being prepared for educational opportunities, it wasn't as strong for me as it could be. I had to basically fight for everything that I have. And so it kind of made me grow up with a sense of, oh, I haven't, I haven't had the most privileged upbringing, and if only I could have had this, then maybe this would be better. All that stuff, and it's stuff that went on in my head, like, oh, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was kind of making excuses for myself. Well, my past is the reason why my present isn't going the way that I wanted it to, and that's an excuse. And traveling takes that excuse away from you. It did me anyway, because when I went to India, I saw real poverty. Um, when I went to Nepal, I saw real poverty. Think of a family of 10, sometimes maybe more, living in a house that's the size of a small room, and it's not particularly safe. In some of these shanty towns that I saw, sometimes there were needles, sometimes there were rats running around, and diseases which we can cure quite easily in the West. It wasn't so easy to deal with in those poor countries because they just don't have money for healthcare. There are even some, Western countries that have great healthcare, like America, for example. And it's not my intention to get political here or anything like that, but America has fantastic healthcare, but not everybody can afford it. Even those who have insurance, if the insurance company says they're not going to pay for something, well, they're not going to pay for it. So it really gave me an appreciation of where I'm from, and it doesn't seem to matter where I go, what country I travel to. I always find, you know, mostly things that I love and things that I'm like, oh wow, I'm so glad I got to see this. But it taught me a lesson to just be grateful for where I am, to be grateful for where I'm from, and to be proud as well. I have so many places that are still on my bucket list. So many things I want to do. So I just want to get out there and be into the world and enjoy all these things. But even the little things sometimes uh, that is not often appreciated about England, I started to appreciate. Take the weather for instance. Listen, let's be real here. You don't get thousands of people around the world saying, oh, I really want to come and see the grey skies of England. I really want to experience the English rain and sort of bask in that. Not many people come to England for the weather. And it can be quite cold. But when you're working in 40-degree temperatures with no air conditioning, because I've lived and worked in many countries across the world as an English teacher primarily. I was doing other volunteering stuff, but mainly that's what I was doing in China and Vietnam. And there were some places where I worked where the heat, which I'd loved so much in a different context, you know, lying on the beach as a tourist, just walking around and just being able to enjoy the sun and the scenery in a slightly different context when you're working and you're living it every day. And in some countries in India, for example, where you have to wear long sleeved clothing as a woman, you know, so you don't get harassed and things like that. That hot weather that I enjoyed maybe just 10 minutes ago suddenly becomes a little bit of a curse. Then I start finding myself dreaming of English weather and, oh, you know, if it only was more temperate. I really want, there were some times where I wanted to be cold. Now, I know I sound like a lunatic when I say that, but, you know, just little things like that that cropped up every now and again, not very often, but every now and again, it kind of hit home. It made me realize that actually I really do appreciate being able to live and work in a country that, in terms of political temperament, we've got a lot of problems. We've got Brexit and we've got people with extreme views and things like that, but it's still a lot calmer than a lot of other places I'm seeing around the world. I don't have to worry about war or, you know, soldiers kicking down my door or things like that. It's a relatively safe country. Obviously, like any other country overseas, you have to be careful and you have to have your wits about you, but in terms of safety, it's relatively safe. And so all these different things I appreciate about where I'm from, and it took traveling all the way across the other side of the world to realize that. But it also gave me an appreciation for the struggles of other people and where other people are from as well. I guess you could say it brought me back down to earth. It made me appreciate the here and now. Things could always be better. For me, of course, you know, I could always have more money. Would I be happier? I don't know. Things could always be better for anybody, even somebody that seems to have it all. A big movie star. So there could always be an improvement, couldn't there? But still, I have this gratitude. I have this appreciation. And travel, this is why I love traveling so much, because having that appreciation of home, understand this, understand the nuance here. Having that appreciation of home doesn't take away my desire to travel. It doesn't take away my appreciation of all of the other countries I've been to. If anything, it makes me want to travel even more. So traveling is such a gift because it makes you appreciate that nuance. It makes you appreciate home even more, and it makes you appreciate traveling even more, because if I had not been traveling, I don't know if that appreciation would have been as strong. So, I mean, look, there are many, many powerful lessons um, that I learned while traveling. But that, that was perhaps the most surprising, because the very reason before that I wanted to travel was to kind of get away from it all. There's that saying, isn't there? Getting away from it all. Getting away from the boring humdrum of England. But actually, traveling, it almost gave England back to me. And it has done the same for so many other travellers around the world. I've met American travellers who've said the same thing. I've met Asian travellers who've said the same thing. It makes you appreciate that home truly is where the heart is. I couldn't even say that properly because it sounds like such a bloody cliche. As I was saying, I was like, oh my God. I'm one of those YouTubers now, aren't I? Home is where the heart is. But actually, and perhaps I could find better words, but it truly is. But you take that home wherever you go. And so, being in a position where I have such a greater appreciation of life as it is, and life as it could be, and life as I find it elsewhere, all at the same time, I I guess I didn't expect that, because if you're traveling to a luxury resort or a very, very beautiful place in another part of the world that feels like paradise, then it's kind of hard to believe that you'll come home thinking, wow, look at where I am. When I traveled to Jamaica with my family years back, the poverty was off the charts, but I lived in it, because my relatives in Jamaica lived in a shanty town, so they had an outside toilet, which was awful. It was literally this wooden box with, it had dead chickens in it, and as well as all the stuff people do on the toilet, and I'm trying not to remember that too much. It had an outside shower, which was a pipe. I remember once I forgot to cover the back of the wall with my towel, and I saw what looked like teenage boys like peeking in. I'm like, ugh. At the same time, I just threw my towel over to cover up that space. And I came back to England with enhanced gratitude. But then I got into the humdrum of everyday life. I got settled into a routine, and gradually I started to forget. Then I went to America not too soon afterwards, and I loved America, man. I loved America. But there were little things I found. Well, I say little things, like healthcare provision, needing a car to get around a lot of places. I don't have a car here in England. Just things like that, little things that kind of added up, and I'm like, okay, it made me appreciate being home in England. It also made me appreciate America even more. So your appreciation for where you go increases, because you've seen it, you've met the people, you realise that, I mean, you hear so many bad things about America on the TV. Right now there's the shootings and things that have happened in America, and so if that's all you see, you're like, oh my God, it's so dangerous, and everyone's violent and stuff. Then you go over there and you see it's not like that at all. You see the real sense of community, strangers coming up and talking to you. They don't really do that so much here in England, but it happens a lot in America. So my appreciation of America grew, but my appreciation of England and the little things that I took for granted also grew. So I began to appreciate the here and now. And there's a spiritual lesson in that, isn't there? Because something else that struck me, I visited some of the most impoverished places on the planet. India, Nepal, I mean, you've got real struggle there. It was hard to see at times, when you're going past it all and you see how some people have to live. and what they've been reduced to, it brought tears to my eyes. I couldn't handle it very well. And you realise that even those people appreciate what they have. So many of them did. I met kids playing around in dirt. They had nothing. They lived, or to my Western point of view, thought they had nothing. Um, and those kids appreciated what they had. Some of them, they couldn't afford to go to school every day, but when they could, some of them would walk for miles. I mean, miles just to get to school. And they cherished the time. They loved it. They loved school. You don't really hear kids in England saying, "Oh, I love school. I can't wait to go." Like, at least I didn't hear many kids in England saying that anyway. And I didn't feel that way when I went to school. I really didn't. But in those places, like in places like Nepal, in places like India, people know the value of education. They know the opportunities it gives you. They know how it can change the balance of power. And the education system anywhere, here in England, it's not as great as it could be. It could always be better. You could have your beef about, oh, well, the curriculum isn't that great, they should include this, we don't need so much of that, and all of that is valid. But it does change the power balance. I see it for myself when I go to these other countries and hearing that the kids have such an appreciation for that. And they're living in the most dire of circumstances. Some of them, on the way to school can be dangerous. They have to walk through jungles, sometimes alone, cross rivers in, sort of rickety little boats. It's not always easy. But they appreciate what little they had. And I realised that actually, even though I never thought of this before, I am actually quite privileged compared to a lot of people around the world. Just for the fact that I grew up in England. And there's this thing about passports as well. Virtually every country I went to, in fact every country I went to accepted my British passport. It was just accepted, whereas there are some passports which are not as readily accepted. Like if you come from certain African countries and you go to places in Asia or around the world, it's not that you can't get in, you can, but it's harder for you. You might have to pay more or bring more paperwork, or you might have to go through an interrogation about why you're there. So I had passport privilege as well, and that's something I'll cover more comprehensively in another blog. So all of these different things combined just made me appreciate where I'm at. It's not even about just appreciating England and just appreciating your home turf. It's just appreciating where you are at, appreciating life as it is. And even now I forget that sometimes. I really do. Sometimes I get stressed. Things aren't going the way that I thought. Things aren't going the way that I planned, and I get stressed. It stresses me out. But I still remember that for all of the adventures that I've taken, I'm lucky. And even in the worst moments, I remember that, and it adds a little bit of light to otherwise what would only be darkness. Because when I'm stressed or something terrible has happened, I still remember that actually I have so much more than many other people, and it doesn't necessarily make a bad situation better. Let's be honest, when you're on, come on, you've had those days, haven't you? Where nothing is going right, everything that could go wrong is going wrong. And look, there are people here in England that are really in not a very good situation for whatever reason. And knowing that it could always be worse doesn't necessarily make it all better. But in general, in terms of general temperament, the way I move through life, and just those moments of remembering, I remember that I am privileged. I remember what I do have. Sometimes, yeah, you get those bad days, and it doesn't make the bad days better, but it certainly changes my overall outlook and my overall perception. And that's not what I expected. I didn't expect to find myself while traveling. I'm still finding myself now. If you are only seeking to travel to find yourself or to rediscover yourself, it's almost like you're approaching it the wrong way. It's like you're running from something. So I didn't have any expectations apart from, hey, I'm going to have a great time. And I did. But that's a powerful lesson. That's a gift that traveling has given me, and a powerful lesson that I've learned. I've worked as an English teacher in many places across the world, and I feel like I was the one that was taught. I was the one that learnt my lesson. And I just wanted to share that with you today. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've got something from this vlog. Of course, I'll be doing many more, mainly travel tips, how you can get to certain places, overcome visa restrictions, how to travel if you really don't have a lot of money at your disposal. You don't need as much money as you think you do. You just need to be smart and a bit open-minded about how you go, how you sort of approach things, and I cover all of that and more. And if you enjoyed today's video, then do feel free to give it a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe for more travel news and tips. Until next time, guys, take care.